Hello, my name is Precious Vines Harris, and I am the Single Maven. Thank you so much for joining me for this motivational moment. So, today we're going to talk about something very important, and it is calculating the cost, right? We're going to talk about calculating the cost as it relates to goals that you have in your specific life, right? If you are single and you want to be married, we're going to talk about calculating the cost as it relates to that specific goal. And you can relate this really to any goal, not necessarily being single or married, any goal that you have in your life, whether it be in your career, your finances, your health, your relationships, whatever it is, right? We're going to talk about how you calculate the cost and use wisdom in making those decisions, okay? So I want to start off with a specific verse, and this is in Luke 14, 28. We're going to read 28 through 32, okay? And it says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish, right? That's the first example. And this is in red, so this is Jesus talking, giving a parable, right? The second part of this says, verse 31 says, or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and will ask for terms of peace, right? So basically, this is talking about you calculating the cost of something, right? If you're talking about building a tower, sitting down and estimating the cost before you actually start, right? Before you lay the foundation. And this can be applicable to your life as it relates to you and a specific goal that you have. Now, why is this important? This is important because I think many times we don't calculate the cost of the goals that we have in our lives, right? This vision that we may set for ourselves, we don't calculate the cost. And then later on, we're looking at ourselves wondering, number one, can I finish it? Can I complete it? Can I get to that goal? Number two, you may get in the goal and realize this is something more than you actually considered. It requires you more additional time, additional resources, additional money. And you feel overwhelmed by that goal. You have accomplished it, but you have to maintain it. You have to do everything that comes with it, right? And sometimes we actually give up because we actually start pursuing that specific goal, but we don't realize that it's going to require more of us than we actually consider in the initial forethought of that thing. And I think also, I mentioned forethought, but I think it's because we don't have forethought, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're calculating the cost of anything, you have to consider the forethought, forecasting out to say, how much is this going to cost me? How much money is it going to cost me? How much time is it going to cost me? How many resources do I have to have? People I have to know, things I have to do after I get it, right? It's just like if you purchase a new car, right? It's very shiny, it's new, it smells good, it looks good, right? But at the end of the day, you have to think about the insurance costs. You have to think about the maintenance, the registration, the tags, right? The taxes, all of those things that come along with it. The maintenance 2 or 3 years from now, are you projecting out to say, I'm going to save this amount to maintain my car? Excuse me, for the oil changes. Hold on one second. Are you actually considering all of those things as it relates to the maintenance? Because at the end of the day, if you don't calculate the cost of something, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have an issue, right? You're not going to necessarily be able to achieve the goal fully. You're not going to maintain the goal, or you're just going to give up on the goal, right? And I think if we're living with intention, first and foremost, living with intention, but also keeping God at the forefront of it and praying about these goals, you still have to use the wisdom that God gave you, right? So I'm encouraging you, friend, as I'm encouraging myself, right? When we're thinking about specific things that we want in life, we have to think about them holistically, right? The totality of circumstances as it relates to that specific thing. If you're single and you want to get married, you have to calculate the cost of that, right? What is it going to cost you to go from this season to this season? Because if you're not able to fully calculate the cost that it takes from you to move between seasons, to transition between seasons, or to level up in life, you're not going to be effective in what you actually pray that God blesses you with, right? So this is what I'm challenging you to do. First and foremost, go to Luke 14 and read verses 28 through 32 to get a context, right? Within this specific passage, the title topic is the cost of being a disciple, and Jesus is actually talking to large crowds of people, asking them questions in parable form to see if they're able to understand specifically what it costs to follow him. What does it cost to be a disciple, right? And basically what you can get out of this is it does require you to have a level of sacrifice. If you all have not watched the video I did earlier today, I think I entitled it What I've Learned About Being Married or something. I was talking about a question as it relates to someone asking me, the difference between being single and being married, right? What have I learned, or how is it different? And I talked about the fact that with marriage, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is there's a lot of sacrifice, right? And I think from a biblical standpoint, when you look at it from that standpoint, you will also see there is a parallel between what Jesus is saying, the cost of being a disciple, right? There's sacrifice, there's forethought, you have to calculate the cost, you have to be fully invested, right? Because at the end of the day, if you decide to pursue a goal and you want to pursue it fully and you're fully invested, you have to look at the totality of it. But when you're looking at the totality of actually getting any specific goal in life, I don't care what it is, right? There's going to be a level of sacrifice involved because you're going to actually have to give of yourself, right? You're going to have to give something of yourself that you may or may not necessarily see a return on in order for you to get to the next level, right? So I really want you, and I encourage you to ask yourself today, excuse me, if there's a specific goal that you're looking for, there's something that you want in life, have you actually calculated the cost, right? Have you thought about it as it relates to you having all of the resources, all of the support, all of the things you could possibly put in your disposal? And I know there's some things that you don't have control over, but the things you do have control over, if it requires you to have a certain level of money, have you actually thought about saving, or do you have that in savings, right? If you're thinking about starting a business, have you actually considered what it costs you as it relates to you putting in your own finances in the beginning, right? Have you actually looked at what it costs you as it relates to you sacrificing part of your home if you're going to use it for a home office, right? Or you networking, having time outside of your schedule to meet with people, to actually build a business plan, to do all of those things. Have you calculated the cost, right? So what I encourage you to do now is intentional planning. We came off the 30-day challenge. We've talked about this all the month of June, getting unstuck. But as we're moving forward through the rest of 2025, there's still time left for you to actually look at where you're stuck, where your goals are, and things you need to do to have forward momentum through the rest of 2025. And what I'm encouraging you to do now is calculate the cost of any goal that you have set before you to make sure you have ensured you have the money, the time, the resources, the mental bandwidth, whatever it is. Have you moved things out of the way to make sure that you have space for this specific thing, okay? Let me look at my notes to see if there's anything else. No, I think I've covered all of it. I think the biggest categories that I would say really, and this is the last thing I'm going to mention, is finances is probably the biggest category that people don't think about, that and time, as it relates to a specific goal that they have, right? For me, a lot of times when I calculate the cost of a goal, it always takes more time and it always takes more money. And that, friend, is where I would probably encourage you to start doing your research to see what kind of cost is associated with that thing that you are hoping and praying for, because I don't want to see you get something and not be able to maintain it, not be able to finish it, not be able to move forward in it because you have not properly calculated the cost, all right? So I do want to thank you so much for joining me for this motivational moment. And I do encourage you, if you've not done so, to subscribe to my YouTube channel, right? I'm trying to increase my subscriber number. I ask that you like this post, you comment, and share with me specifically where are you calculating the cost in your life, right? And also share with a friend, okay? Thank you so much for joining me. Until next time.